So basically, it was going against an ANCAP. Are you an ANCAP?
Yes.
Why would you call yourself an ANCAP?
Well, I'm an ANCAP because I'm a consequentialist, and I believe that justified hierarchies are the best way to make the most amount of people flourish.
You think that capitalism has just hierarchies? Like, do you think that we should
Yeah,
put people in
pure
position of power
capitalism is
based on?
anarchism.
Okay, but we are talking about just and unjust hierarchies, right?
Yeah, just hierarchies.
Yeah. Why would you say that uh, people that have more money than each other needs to have more political power based on like what? Just because they've got money? So that
Well,
it?
well, first of all, in anarchism, there is no political power because there is in politics. So that's the first thing, right?
Politics is made by the economical power, so yeah, no.
Yeah, so I would agree that economic power they would definitely have, but economic power is different from political power, right? Because political power is
Politics is
monopolized, but
just
not economic power.
political power is basically just economical power. It's
No,
basically
no,
that.
no, they're very
State is
different.
formed because to say make government money, which is again, it's all about economy. It's all about economical powers.
Well, I would agree with you that everybody's objective in politics is economic power, but there's a very big distinction between economic power and political power. The difference is this: political power is monopolized power, but economic power is not monopolized power.
Uh, if I don't remember if the meaning of those words changed, but last time I checked, nah. Again, economical power can be not monopolized and can and cannot be. Like again, this doesn't make like I don't understand why would you think that one is always a monopoly and one is always not a monopoly. I don't like based on what.
Well, I can show you the distinction. I'll demonstrate the distinction. Okay. So the distinction is this. Have you ever heard of probably not because you said you're from like Rome or something. So let's say that there's like a cult, but like it's like a voluntary cult and they're in the state of like Texas and they have their own compound and basically it's all voluntary there. And then the state rolls in and they're like, yo, you've got a lot of guns and we don't like that. So you either hand over our guns or we're going to destroy your compound. And they say, we're not doing anything wrong. We're completely peaceful. All of this is voluntary. We're not hurting anybody. And we don't want to hand over our guns because we're using the guns to protect ourselves. And then the government says, too bad. And then they go in and they basically take over the compound.
What do you
That
mean
is political power.
protect yourself?
Sorry?
What are you talking about when you say protecting themselves? From what?
Well, let's say, for example, a rogue government. That could be one thing. Or maybe just like some invaders or maybe animals. It could be anything.
Okay,
But
so
they're only
basically the
using the guns
government
for
just
self-defense.
what exactly did the government say? Like, what was the legal reason for doing this?
Okay, well,
I
I'm
don't ask you.
butchering the real example, but like, let's go with the hypothetical. They're just saying you have too much firepower and you look like a threat, so we want to
I don't care
neutralize
about
the
the
threat by taking
hypothetical.
away the weapons.
Oh, yeah, I don't care about the hypothetical. I care about what they actually did in this case. And you're trying to make an example how things would work in the real world. You cannot use an hypothetical for that.
Well, yes, you can, because right now we're talking about our economic system preferences, right?
Yeah, but you were making an argument based on what is happening. You cannot make an hypothetical if you make an argument based on what is happening, because an hypothetical is not based on what is happening. It's based on a hypothetical scenario.
Well, I mean, ultimately, it doesn't matter if I use a hypothetical or a real scenario because all that I'm trying to do is test the limits of the economic system that we want to implement.
Again, you cannot test the economic system if in reality by using an hypothetical. Again, Also,
Yeah, you
we are not
can.
even talking about the economical system. We are just talking about the state doing something. If the state didn't do that something, I mean, I could say, okay, if the only reason was that they had firepower, okay, I would say that they wouldn't be allowed. But is that how it went? Like, is that the only reason?
Well, let's just say we go with the Waco scenario. I don't remember the exact reason the government gave, but the cult in Texas, they were, I don't remember what they were doing. They're just like chilling out. They were like a religious cult, and they did have weapons. And I don't remember the exact reason the government came in, but they said, yeah, we don't like this, and we're going to stop you. So, do you think the government was justified in doing that?
Uh, oh fuck! I got the.
Do you want me to repeat it,
I
or
got no, no. I got the. I was trying to search it up on Google. Just I got the thing in Italian instead of.
Waco?
uh,
Okay, so the government's
yeah.
justification for the Waco siege centered on the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the ATF warrant.
Ah,
So
okay.
they wanted to search the compound for illegal firearms. Um, yeah, they just wanted to seek the They wanted to seek the compound for illegal firearms and substances. That was their reasoning, but I don't think they had any. Did they have a warrant? I don't think they did.
Yep. They most likely had on a siege with base of 51 days. Yeah, they definitely did.
But if it was, then where was the? How did they justify the warrant? What was the intelligence?
Probably
That's what I
they
wonder.
had some serious evidence of them having illegal weapons and substances.
Yeah, but what? I'm just curious what the evidence would be. Anyway,
Yeah.
okay. So I guess that was their justification. Their
Mhm.
justification was they wanted to search the compound for illegal weapons and substances.
Yeah. Whether or not I agree with the reason, no? I still believe that the government should be able, if the government is right, in a, if I agreed with it, if there was actual damage being done to get in and apprehend individuals that could be doing something dangerous. Not that are doing something dangerous, not could be.
Yeah, that's
Which is
fine. If they're doing something dangerous, that's fine. But so like the whole reason I brought up the Waco example is in a political powered system, they have the right to do this to go in without any, or you could say reasonable
but there are
means to go
political
in.
systems in which there is
But
no, let's say, there is a fight for violence. For example, in the Mexican government is constantly fighting against gangs, and they are I wouldn't say evenly matched, but still, again, this is a place in which the let's say monopoly on violence is not reached, or in a place like Gaza at this moment, or in other places in which there is a constant struggle to reach political and violent monopoly. And it's not
sure.
always that political power is a monopoly.
Well,
Also,
yes,
like
it is.
we
Like
don't talk
political
about the
power
state,
entails
we don't talk
monopoly,
about
doesn't
the
it?
hmm?
Political power entails monopoly.
No. Again,
We
for example, the United, I mean, non United, the EU, the European Union,
Yeah, so like, can you say no to anything that the
monopoly.
political arm does? Can you say no to them? Like they're like, hey, we want to search your eyes. Can you say no?
Uh, if they don't have a warrant, yes. If they do,
Even if they
yes.
do have a warrant,
No.
even if they do have a warrant, can you say yes or no? You can't.
If they do have a warrant, then I can't. I'm gonna get arrested if I don't. If I try to
Exactly.
interfere.
But like in
Yeah.
an economic system, economic power, they can't just like search your house. No matter what the reason is, they're not allowed to seize your house, search your house.
Yeah, because that's not the thing that an economic power does. Again,
Correct.
maybe the economic power can't take you out from the house, but the economic power can, for example, starve you to death or
Yeah.
make you
Correct.
move from a city
Correct.
because you cannot buy anything there.
And
Yeah.
so that was my original point. My original point was that the distinction between political power and economic powers, political power acts in a way that's monopolized, so they can do things to you that you do not consent to. but economic power
It's
cannot
not
do things that you
monopoly
do
at
not
all.
consent
That
to.
doesn't. That's not how the word is used.
How do you define monopoly?
Monopoly. Okay. Actual definition would be better if I search it up. But
Go ahead.
say, yeah, the exclusive possession or control of the supply of or trade in a commodity of or service.
Yep.
Yeah. What would be the
So the
exclusive
government
possession of?
the monopoly monopolizes force. The government monopolizes force.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with. Wait.
Yeah.
What did you say? The government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the government monopolizes
And there are
force, and the
governments that
market does
don't
not.
monopolize first. You're talking about states here.
Uh huh. Yeah.
Okay, if you're talking about states, I would say, yeah, but there exist governments. Again, it's like saying that the
Yeah.
only form of let's say uh, capitalism is the, and I only gave example of the examples in which it is a monopoly. Again, there are form of governments that don't have a monopoly on violence.
Yeah, so the reason that capitalism is superior to any type of state or any type of monopolized government structure is because in capitalism you have full bodily autonomy. In any other system, you do not.
No, you don't.
Yeah, you do.
Simply enough, you don't. Again, I made the example. A company can just force you to stay in a place and then not fit you. They could do it. There's
How?
nothing stopping them.
Give me an example.
Again, you cannot afford to live anywhere else in a city, so you have to stay in that place in that city because you cannot afford anything else, and then but you cannot afford the food there, and you die.
Okay, so like the example is we're in a private city, and in the private city there's hundreds of companies, and what all the companies are saying you don't get a job.
In this case, yeah, it's completely possible in which someone can, again, this happens all the time that even though there's a lot of people that should be hiring, people still are not hired and stay homeless. This happens now.
Um,
Like, why would you think that in your system that wouldn't happen? Or
well, okay,
maybe
so
instead of being homeless, you're a slave. It wouldn't be fully, but you won't have full bodily autonomy there at all. Slave.
okay, well, I mean, so like in a private or in an anarchist state, right, where they have full capitalism, it's
No,
possible.
you said state.
What I say?
You said state.
In an anarchist
An
society,
anarchist state.
in an
Okay,
anarchist
so
society, if we had like hundreds and hundreds of businesses, I guess it's possible that they could all deny you employment, but that's not their problem, right?
again, doesn't really matter. Your claim was not that. Your claim was you will have full bodily autonomy, and you don't.
Well, you would have full bodily autonomy because they can't touch you or your property.
Do you think that bodily autonomy is only if you're not being touched? Like, for example,
Yeah.
if I take away all your, again, if I take away all the things that are not property or you, yeah, I can still I can still very much restrict your freedoms.
Mm-hmm. Well, those would be positive freedoms, right, instead of negative freedoms. But like the most important part is that you can't touch somebody or their property, and in the same regard, that same person can't touch you or your property. So you have to
Oh
consent
wait,
to each other.
no, not like wait, not at all. There's literally private militias in ANCAPs. Those would be legal, right?
Yeah. Yeah, private military
Then they can.
forces.
They definitely can rob you and steal your property. Yeah, they can.
Well,
They
they
can steal you.
can. Okay, okay. They can rob you, but it would be a really, really bad decision to do that because they would go out of business if they did that. So they have no incentive to rob you.
No, they wouldn't.
Yeah, they
Again,
would.
first of all, you would need to prove that in a court of not law, but under your peers in this case, and you don't have any money because they just robbed you.
Yeah, bro, this is the
Again,
warlord
even if
myth. You're
somehow you
saying
were
that
insured,
this is the warlord
again,
myth.
even
You're
if somehow
saying
you were
that
insured, again, if this person were insured, maybe and only maybe, but again, why would and why wouldn't they just say no? You got robbed by a powerful corporation. We don't have the means to fight this. So you're on your own.
well, so like let's say you have this evil warlord military private military force. They actually couldn't do this at least on a very very wide scale, and even on a small scale it probably wouldn't happen. But they could never
Right.
get away with it because their entire structure of the system is built upon people who believe in reasonable legal systems, and they believe in reasonable use of force. So the entire company, even if it's like 100 people,
Wow,
you're
you're
you
one of
can't
the.
you can't say
And
that all
how are you
100
gonna
people in that
make
company are bad.
everyone think that way? How are
And
you
the
gonna make
shareholder,
most, at least, people think that way?
most people think what way?
Hmm? That, for example, the fact that you got robbed means that now they cannot purchase from this company that might as well have I don't know, monopoly on some parts of or at least not monopoly. I know you wouldn't agree with that, but a large share of some parts of the economy that would exclude them from having cheap things. Like, would you say that that would be enough? Like them robbing one person
If
and people stop buying from them at all.
if
Like,
they robbed so if they robbed only one person, it would be an incredibly stupid decision because first of all it would cause the entire reputation of the whole company to go in flames, and the the
that is
the
only
benefit
for,
of robbing one person would not even be worth probably the time it takes for the soldiers to bring their weapons over to rob you. It probably just wouldn't even be worth it, especially if
okay.
you're poor.
By the
They would have
way,
nothing to
they
gain.
wouldn't know who was. Like, they were hiring mercenaries that most likely wouldn't reveal the fucking people that they're working for. So the only thing you really know is mercenary robs you, and mercenary are guns for hires. Yeah, they do that. That's their model of business.
Their model of business is having a consumer base, yes?
Yeah, and people want the mercenaries to do exactly what they want. They don't want
And
them to
well,
do
people want the
good.
mercenaries to what? Protect them?
No, even to attack someone. Yeah,
No.
why
No. Okay,
not?
so the consumer base wants to hire mercenaries to go steal from other people. That's what you're saying.
One of the things. Yeah, they
And
want. No, actually, they just
you're
want.
saying that this
They just
society
want.
exists right now and today. So you're saying that anywhere in America or anywhere in a state that a large group of people right now today, a large group of people right now today would be
But
willing
that
to
wasn't the thing
raise
that I
a
said. It was
military service.
today.
They'd be willing to purchase a military service to go and steal from another large group of people. That's what you're saying.
No, in this case, they would just hire 2 or 3 people from that group and to steal your stuff for to steal the singular persons. Maybe they just don't like you.
So
Doesn't
like
really have to
one or two
be like
people, one or two people hires one or two mercenaries to go steal from somebody.
steal from them, kill them. I don't know, rape them. I don't know.
Okay, do you think
There's
a
weird
private
stuff,
city
but
would be do
mercenaries
you think
do
a
weird
private
stuff.
city would be okay with this?
Hmm?
Do you think a private city would be okay with this?
I think they wouldn't care.
You
Again,
think they wouldn't
they
care?
allowed mercenary for hires to be mercenary for hires. Maybe they would go to find those mercenary, but they wouldn't go for again the perpetrator. It would be pretty much impossible to go for the actual perpetrators.
So you don't think that if a private city finds out that two of its residents have died? By the way, these are people who work in that city and also pay for products in that city and pay the city itself. You're saying they wouldn't care if these people died?
So people know.
Okay, well then
No,
you're
no, no.
missing the incentives. You're missing the
And
incentives.
there are so many people in today's society. Two doesn't really matter. Like, would you think
What?
that they would go to war with a powerful corporation just because two random people got robbed or killed or whatever? If you think that.
Yo, I have a question for you. I have a question for you.
Hmm.
Has anybody close to you ever died?
Yeah,
Did you care?
yeah.
Was it a big deal in like your small circle? Was it a big deal or no?
Small circle, my family, you mean?
Yeah, was it
Yeah,
a
I
big
guess.
deal for you guys, or did you shrug it off? You're like, it's just another day.
I mean, they weren't. When you mean killed, you mean
Or died,
dying
died.
or
They died.
killed?
Died,
Okay,
died.
then yeah, it wasn't a big deal because it was natural. Like,
Well, yeah, but like,
from time people
was
die.
it, did you forget about it in like 24 hours, or did it kind of go on for a
No,
couple of days? Maybe a week?
more than a couple of days.
And then I'm assuming you guys had a funeral,
Yeah,
and I'm assuming like a few people at least went to the funeral.
yeah.
Okay, so do you really think that when somebody dies, it's not a big deal? I'm not asking you morally speaking. I'm asking
And
you like socially speaking.
for the people close to you, yeah. But again, you asked for a city. The
Yes.
city wasn't
Yes.
in tears for my for my grandfather's death.
It doesn't matter
No,
if they were in tears or not. What matters is that there was an
you asked me
impact on
for
your
my
life.
no. You asked for my personal circle. That's
Yes.
not what happens when two random people die. Again, people die all the time in a city, and
Random people
people
have
don't
friends and
really care.
family.
Yeah. Do you think that
Yeah.
those people would like hire mercenary to go against that guy? Or like if you think that they're not gonna buy food from that company, if somehow they find out which company they which person or company hired those mercenaries, exactly
Yeah, let me
what is
ask
gonna
you, if
happen?
a
They stop.
private
They lose some
company, let's
customers.
say you're living in this private city and a private military force killed one of your family members, what would you do?
uh, a private military. But that's what private military do. I would be
Would you
angry at the people
you'd be
that had the
angry?
idea of making private military something that should be. Yeah, I would
Would you
be
buy
pretty
from that
angry at that.
military? Would you buy from that military company?
Uh, yeah, I would probably buy from them to find out who the fuck did hire them. Yeah,
You would buy from the company that murdered your family member or
why
friend?
not? They're just people that do a service. I would much rather know who the fuck ordered them to do it. Yeah, if they are the best company in
Because you want to take
town,
them
I'm
down.
gonna back
Because you want to take them
them.
down. Because you want to take them down.
Hmm?
Because you want to take them
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at least
So
in this case.
the idea that even if they kill one or two people is going to have a much bigger impact than what you're saying. The reality of the situation is that friends and family members and neighbors and people, unless it's like an extremely rare case, people are going to find out about this. They're not
They're
going to be
the
happy.
population.
There are
They
going to
already
be
spend much more on
there's
defense than some random person can spend on
no,
contracts.
absolutely not, dude. Do you see like
Yes,
news stories
absolutely
about
yes.
people dying in New York? These are big deals.
People dying in New York. What do you mean? You
Yeah,
mean
like do you see like
the
do
CEO?
you like see the news stories of like people being killed in like the street or whatever? Like we see news stories about this on our local news outlets, and it's a really big deal
People
when somebody dies
people
in like
getting
the
killed
public or something.
in the what do you mean in the public? Do you
Like
think that
journalist,
again
like
we
on
are
the
talking about
news.
killed and okay on the news, but the news it's not to make like okay something being like on first page on the news doesn't mean that people care. It means that people click on it and then click away. Like they just want to click. It doesn't mean that they care
Why do they click on the video?
because someone died. They want to see who. They don't know who that is. Click away. Again,
Exactly.
just for
Have you ever
clicks,
seen
not for
comment
caring.
sections? Have you ever seen comment sections on these news stories? Like YouTube or whatever?
Not American. Uh,
Um
this
well, do
doesn't
you live in
really
Rome?
happen that much in In Italy, it doesn't really happen. Like, of
Okay.
course, newsletters are gonna talk about it,
Yeah.
but I
So
don't
it's
see really
like
comments.
the basic idea is this, and you can disagree with it or not. But like, so the whole idea of like anarchism and like decentralized systems is that all people in the system are out for their self-interest, and they do not like when they are oppressed or hurt or if their friends are killed in any way, and so they will push back against the system doing this harm. And because it's
That can
decentralized,
work in any
there's
time, in
going
any
to
type of
be
society.
there's going to be lots and lots of military organizations, lots and lots of militias, lots of companies. The power is
Basically,
not
we are all at war with each
centralized.
other. Good job.
The power is not centralized. So what's going to happen is when you have one corrupt force,
Complete
it's going
war.
to be squashed by the majority of the other forces who wish to have economic freedom and who wish to trade freely, because the majority of people just want to live their lives. And if they see an injustice happening, they're not going to let that slide. They're going to push back. They're going
No,
to
not at all.
fund they're going to fund
Okay,
military operations to crush a corrupt force.
okay. Let's say that there's a little girl on the street. This happened today. Do you think that the little girl on the street has any fault in her being there and being without a place to stay or without something to eat?
No, if there's a homeless girl on the street, it's not her fault.
Okay. Would you say that it's just that she stays that way?
I would say it's a cosmic injustice.
Okay. Why aren't people giving their money, or at least why aren't most people giving the little girl money?
Because they don't owe it to her.
Hmm?
Because
Okay,
they don't
then
owe it to her.
they don't owe to the victim of that of the mercenary to use their money for their injustice
I agree with you. They
argument.
don't they don't owe victims money. But you know what happens in real life? They react to injustices. That's what happens in real life. So if a homeless girl's on the street, guess what's going to happen in like 20 or 30 minutes? This is going to be a big story. People are going to see this. Nice ladies are going to go up and be like, "Where's your
No, this happens
parents?"
all the
No,
time.
no, no, no. Listen to me.
This happens
Things
all
are
the
going to
time.
happen. Cops are going to be
Really?
called. Civil servants are going to be called. There's going to be a massive investigation. There's all going to be kinds of people. Churches are going to step up to help this
Massive,
little girl on the
massive,
street.
massive.
That is reality.
You
That's
don't
what
know of
happens
him.
in reality.
Name me one time in which there was a extreme amount of police work for one single little girl on the streets. One.
Well,
Most
I
time
don't
cops ignore the shit.
I don't know of any example of a homeless girl on the streets, but I can give you an example of one thing if
Um,
you want. I can give you a personal
oh,
example if you want of something that's similar.
okay, you can.
Okay, so I was working somewhere, and in this establishment, there was a person who got really, really high to the point where they passed out, like they were on drugs. Okay,
Mhm.
and it was huge. It was a huge, I don't know, situation. It was a huge situation. All the
Mhm.
customers in the area were talking about it. They were like talking to the staff. The entire staff in the building was talking about it. Like 3 police officers came, 2 EMTs came. There was a massive big deal, and this was only because the person passed out from being high, just because they
Yeah.
passed out from being high, and there was this massive situation
But the
about it.
reason why they did it is because they did it in a public space, and it is
Yeah,
not normal for that to happen.
correct.
Little
That's
girls
correct.
on the street is something that in a lot of places is very normal. So people
Like
just
maybe
work
third
hard.
world countries, but not like first world countries
No,
like the
for countries
EU
to see
and
people being homeless all the time.
well, like
Maybe you
homelessness
call the police.
exists.
Again, even if you would say that you would call the police, you probably wouldn't give them money. Again, we are talking about a place in where police is private, so even to call the police, it would cost you money. Most
Yeah, that's
people wouldn't do
true.
it. Like, do you think that the people that call the police in the hotel, where they call the ambulance in the hotel, share the price of the ambulance? No, they
I mean,
didn't.
listen, you're just wrong. Like, why are like billions and billions of dollars given to charity every single year if people just don't care?
Uh, a lot of time it's tax evasions. A lot of time is not tax
Let me
evasion.
grant you
Tax,
like 80% of it is tax evasion. What's the other
well, not tax
20%?
evasion. That's well, people that are concerned. Yeah, I
Yeah,
would agree with
exactly.
it. There are
It's like
some.
the
Again, there are some people, but again, a functioning system of actual help is not. for the minority of people. Like again, it's not done by the minority of people. You need the majority to do something, and you
I don't
won't
know.
get the majority to all give you your money without some form of coercion. That's what the state is. That's what a government does.
Okay. Well, we talked about my system for a while. How about we talk about your system?
Yeah, I would basically say that what I can argue for is a socialist system, not a communist, because communist is far in the future. I would say that the
Okay, I would say
best
socialist
way.
system falls apart.
What is a socialist system?
How do I define a socialist system? A socialist system would just be the democratization of the marketplace. So you democratize businesses, you democratize well, that's basically it. You just democratize businesses.
Uh, no. Also, even if okay, by your definition, why would that be bad? Yeah,
It
I can't
so
understand why.
it would be bad because it would not be efficient, and it would
Why not?
induce conflict.
Why?
Well, because okay, so shared property induces conflict.
It's not shared property in this case.
Yes, it
It's
is.
shared decision. It's a democratization, not redistribution.
Well, there's private property and there's shared property. There's nothing else, right?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
said just democratizing the decision process.
Yeah, so socialism would aim to take away more private property and give more, would have more group property or shared property.
Uh, I would say that socialism aims to get rid of private property, and the definition of private property would be the means of production.
That's
So
correct.
anything you use.
And then you would vote on how to use the property, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you just democratize all the businesses, basically.
Hmm.
Yeah.
None. Okay. I would vote on how that maybe how some of that business is redistributed, but then only the people working there would vote, except in extremely rare cases.
So
Why would
even one
someone
business
that
would fall
doesn't work
apart.
there?
Even we
Mhm.
don't even have to look at the entire system. We could look at one business. One of your businesses, your socialist businesses, would completely fall apart. So let's take a
Why?
look at one of your businesses. Okay, what do you want to do? Like retail, a Subway?
Okay, let's do a subway.
Okay, let's do a Subway. All right. So we have now toppled the private property owner. He's now part of the company. We've decided to democratically decide how it works. So now everybody has a vote. Let's say there's like, I don't know, 20 people in the Subway. Everybody has one vote and they get to decide what to do. So I suppose the first thing they do is decide on leadership, right?
Yeah. I don't know
Okay.
if people would need a leader in 20 with 20 people. I'm not sure. Like if you talk about 1,000, yeah, of course you need some sort of leadership. But 20 people, like you could probably go around without it.
Okay,
But
so
yeah.
let's look at how a Subway operates, right? The way
Mhm.
Subway operates is it needs to produce sandwiches for consumers. And the way it
Yeah.
does this is by having a building, keeping maintenance on the building,
Yeah.
ordering products and having them delivered to the Subway, having people on the floor create and serve those products. And I
Yeah.
think that's about it. And they just have to make sure all their systems work, like they have good like money keeping tabs and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
how do the voters decide what they want to do? Are they going to have a leader? Are they not going to have a leader?
No. Okay. Let's say that the first thing they do is elect a leader. And let's say that the next thing they do is vote on, for example, what percentage of the profits would go to who. Probably most business would, especially in a subway where people mostly do the same kind of job for the same amount of profit, they would share all the profits and get away, like use it. Also, also some sort of they would vote on some sort of like amount of that profit to keep it for expansion of the company. But that wouldn't happen in a socialist system because you wouldn't buy private property. So yeah, they would just split the wage.
Okay. So how would they go about the wage deciding process? For example, I'm assuming they would be like, okay, how about we do this? We split all the profits evenly, and then they put this to a vote because none of them can make
Hmm.
decisions unilaterally. So they would have to put this to a vote, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and so they do the vote, and then boom, they've all decided they're going to do profits. Now, how do they decide about splitting up the jobs? And I think this is probably where it breaks, or this is the
Jobs.
hardest part for the socialist business. Who do they decide is the leader, and who do they decide the janitor is? Because I think we can all agree that the
The way in
leader
which
the
they
leader
elect a
isn't
leader
necessarily.
is simple. Yeah, but electing a leader is very simple. Again, we do it. We do it in a democratic system already. Like, it's not difficult to elect a leader. Are you saying that they would have trouble electing a competent leader, or just electing a leader? Because electing a leader is extremely easy.
Well, yeah, no, electing a leader is easy for the person, well, for the people who agree that somebody gets to be a leader. But would we say that the leader comes with perks? Like, for example, does the leader have more responsibilities and do they have to work harder? Or do they work
Moral
less and they have less
responsibility.
responsibilities?
No, they would just do what, let's say, they would have certain powers over the others to make the decision making more swift. If his decision making is not profitable to the rest of them, that can be always voted out.
Okay, but why? So, like, why would you want to be the leader? Do you think being the leader would be harder?
Um, Again, if you have again, if just like, let's say, for example, you think that the current leader or the previous leadership in this case was not distributing money correctly, and it wasn't using the best strategy to gain profit. So you do an expose on how you want to run the business, and your coworkers agree. They put you in leader, and now you're not the only one getting profits, but you share the profits that you're responsible for.
Okay, so how do they decide the profits you're responsible for? Like, what does that mean? Like, what does a sandwich maker get in comparison to someone else?
No, and I didn't say. I said instead of the profits only going to him, the profits would be evenly split. He still will get something.
Uh huh. Would some jobs be harder than others?
Yeah,
So why would you want to do the harder job and get paid the same?
uh, because okay, if let's say that we have an election and nobody wants to do a job. Okay, nobody wants to do a job. What are we gonna do about it? Are we gonna ask for someone else outside the company? Are we gonna hire something new? He said, no, we don't have the budget for that. Okay, since we know it, there is two options, I think. Everyone does it, or equally shared, or we get two people, but we have to pay them more to equate for the fact that no one wants to do that job.
Okay, so like let's
Simple
say
enough.
a janitor job. Like nobody wants to do the janitor job, but if you are you saying we make incentives to do the janitor job because it's
Yeah, because
less
no one wants to do it.
enjoyable?
Yeah, that or
Okay, and the incentives is you
everyone
get
does
slightly
it
more pay.
yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so you get slightly more pay for doing the janitor job. So basically, you assign higher incentives to less desirable jobs
Yeah,
within the company.
yeah,
Okay, cool. All right, so we voted on the leaders, we voted on all the positions, and then I guess everybody does their job. We have accountants, we have leaders. I mean, I guess that doesn't seem to work out so bad. As long as you're paying people and they want to do it, that's totally fine. I mean,
yeah.
I guess like another question I have is who would decide to do like move forward with the business? Like, how would you decide to expand the business or to downsize on the business? How would you decide
Yeah,
that? Would
yeah.
the leader decide it?
Since private property is not for sale, the way in which you would expand the business is by showing good results, both for like customers' enjoyment and profit shares to do let's say to go up to the local government, say, okay, this our business is successful. You can see it. We have really good customer service and customer appreciation. We would like to expand here because there seems to be a lack of our service. And yeah, do you want to give us that space that is not used right now? And then the local government decides whether or not they need other things or whether or not you get to expand.
Okay. So
Downsizing is
if
gonna be the same as like roles. Like
okay, so basically, if the whole this whole company votes on if they want to expand or not, they decide to expand. What they do is they go to the governmental structure and then they request for a space that they've identified if they can use this to expand their operations. And the
yeah,
government will
they
either say yes, you can, or no, you can't.
yeah based on the needs of the local community and based on their pitch of the idea and the
Okay,
results that they have had for the time that they have at that place.
Okay, so this presents a new problem. How do they decide if multiple businesses, because like property is like scarce, so everybody wants property. So like everybody's probably going to be for going for property that is not used. How do they
I
decide who
mean,
gets that property?
not really, because they wouldn't really get any profit off of expanding. Like they would just do it because they think that like they believe in their service and they would like to grow in popularity. Maybe there isn't really a reason to expand in the system. It most of the times it would be the local government to ask first certain types of businesses to expand in their area because they have a need.
Wait, what's the need? What's the standard for the need? I don't understand.
It could be very well something that singular people ask for. In the local government is very local. So, like for example, it could be that 10% of the population wants of a certain area wants ice cream, wants an ice cream place in their area. So they ask, okay, we have three buildings that are still usable. We want an ice cream shop, and the government is gonna put a bundle for people that want to come into their place and building an ice cream shop.
So the voters, the citizens decide what businesses they have by petitioning to the government what businesses they want.
Yeah, yeah, I would say that that is most effective to accommodate for the needs instead of instead of calculation from like companies. Again, I don't think that people need McDonald's that much. Pretty sure they don't.
Well, I mean, I think the people would disagree with you, considering how big
Mm.
McDonald's is.
I mean,
I think a lot
people
of
would
people would like
probably
a
say,
McDonald's.
uh, people would probably say that McDonald's, and it's like the best example of something that people will not like to have is what's that shop chain that is very influential in America? Costco.
Um, Costco, Sonic, I don't know. Costco.
I don't remember exactly which one. The one that pays their employees really shittily, and they get all the products from
Amazon? Are you talking about
overseas.
Amazon?
Not Amazon. I think it's either Costco or similar types of dealership, because those
Okay.
places are very bad for the community. All the money that that business gives and that business takes is not redistributed in community and is not beneficial to the community. So definitely people wouldn't want that if they knew how it worked. And for McDonald's, I would say that if most people knew that there was an alternative which was more healthy than fast food, they would say, yeah, probably they would prefer that.
Okay, so I think I think the socialist system where people vote for businesses is extremely slow because the difference between entrepreneurs and people who vote for businesses is the entrepreneurs would look for a need in the market and then they would put that need there. For example, they would put a somebody would open up a Target and it's got lots of clothes and different
That
products in
would
it.
be now that would be easier because instead of someone having to see, need to evidence it that there is a need that is not being met, people whose needs are not being met literally will go and point it out for you to the government to say, okay, we need this. Somebody wants to, they get in.
Yeah, that could be the case, and I agree with you. For example, if they're like, I'm starving and I need food, so we should probably make a food business, that would be a good idea. But
Yeah.
I don't think it would be as well. It just wouldn't be as quick as like multiple businesses opening up because people see a marketplace. Like people do like businesses do like very complex analytics and research in order to figure out where to open a business, and they do
Yeah,
way
but
more
they
research than an average voter
profit
would
more
do.
than anything else, which means that, for example, this is a phenomenon that happens all the time in America. Small towns die out. Small towns die out. They have to relocate in the city. People wouldn't want to leave their birthplace if they had a way of influencing the decision making and having people come here and business boom. But no business wants to invest in that area because, well, it's just not profitable for them to do so.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Mm.
And then they just kind of migrate to wherever the business is.
Yeah, it's like whether or not it is profitable or not, we shouldn't really look at profitable. We should look at, is this gonna better the community? This should be our goal.
I've
Is this
always been
gonna
curious about this. I've always been curious about this. What does the police force in socialism look like?
uh, I mean, it would. This really goes from place to place. I'm not sure there would be like, for example, in America, of course, it's a place full of gun. It's probably impossible to take out all the guns. So the only very much difference that there would be in a socialist system is the prison system is much more for rehabilitation rather than punishment, and cops are divided in social workers that are meant to have handle non-violent offenses and what you would consider police right now. Of course, cutting down on corruption, but that doesn't really mean anything. Like that. That's something that can happen in all systems.
Yeah, that's true. Um, but I mean, like, so I guess what specifically would your system be like that you envision in socialism? Because I know there's lots of different systems.
I would say that you know, the system is not really that much different from what the government looks like right now. It's just much more democratic, much more direct form of governance, and that's kind of it. The decision making that is right now made mostly by companies, made by both the workers and the government, the people that are working in the government, and that works pretty much the same. Again, the primary difference is that there is no private property. If you want to talk about communism, it's gonna be much more, let's say, of an ideal talk because, well, it's gonna take much more time to reach a global socialist government to even start thinking about anarchy.
Actually, now that I think about it, would your police force be any different than the one we have? Because we don't have market-based police forces. We have government-based police forces. So would that be any different from in socialism? I don't think it would.
No, it wouldn't in that sense. I think the problem in the police force, both in the US and in Europe, is not really because it's the government, but it's mostly because they're either like, I think they're mostly working on bad laws and a bad way of thinking about what constitutes helping the community. Like sometimes cracking down on crime doesn't help the community at all, and For example, instead of paying police to crack down on crime, a much easier way to deal with crime would be to invest in the community. If even a fraction, if like 50% of the funding that right now is used for police funding in the US will be used for funding the communities that are right now struggling with crime and addiction, I'll say that you would have much better results.
I think this is socialism's main problem is they don't seem to accept incentives in human nature. So if you have welfare or a welfare state, people are going to try to take welfare because they wouldn't want to work and they want free money. Like that's just
I
human
mean,
nature.
yeah, but there's more free money. Like again, people again, this is something that I really don't understand about ANCAPs. If you want to live in a world free of oppression, yet you make the argument that anyone to work will need to be threatened with homelessness and starving. I don't really understand how that works.
I can explain it to you. I can explain it to you. So this is how it would work. This is how we view it. Let's say an old man goes out in the middle of nowhere, like the wilderness, and he builds a farm, and it's like a carrot farm. Okay, so he builds a carrot farm, and then he raises it for like 10 years, and he's made this carrot farm. It's his, and then some random dude walks up, and he's like, hey, can I have some carrots? And the farmer's like, no, you can't have my carrots. I made these carrots. I built this up from the ground. These are my carrots. In a socialism world, that farmer would owe that man carrots. It doesn't make any
No,
sense. Yeah.
no, it wouldn't.
Wait. Do you respect the
Again,
farmer's private property?
again, I would respect the fact that if he built a business that in a place in which there was no government, in which there wasn't the government land, and doing it with non-government fundings, okay, you probably are now a government of one person that is gonna be independent from the other governments. Yeah, fine. That I would just instead of calling it your private property, I would just say now this is now you are a government. You're a form of government of one people, and you have control over this area, and you have jurisdiction over that. Agree on these rules to have a trade relationship with us, or don't if you don't want to have any sort of relationship with us.
So do you agree with homesteading then? So like the idea that like if you go and you mix your labor with the land, so if you build a small farm, that farm is yours. That's basically homesteading.
Uh, Depends if that is done in, and you could say that this is a place in which you have let's say a duty to work, and if it's taken and if you've created it by yourself, then since it wasn't created by the state will need to buy it from you if they want to. And I really like this is pretty much a very small amount of scenario. I didn't even think of like singular persons doing this. Like rather, like
Well,
there
yeah, I
will be
mean
some people
that's
that do this, but I don't really like they wouldn't really matter in the system. I would say that most people today could like go into a place that is not really used and build their own business from the scratch in a place where there's basically nobody living there. Yeah, they could. Basically, no one does it. I don't think that would change in a socialist system.
okay. Okay, yeah. So like it sounds like you do agree with it. So like let's say I go to the forest and the forest is completely unowned by anybody and I build a tree house in that forest. Is that
Mm.
tree house and the tree that the tree house is on, is that mine? Do I own that?
Yeah, I would say that you would be recognized as the only person that lives in that place. So that place would be under your superstition. You would become a one-person government of that place.
Okay. Okay. And so let's say I invited a friend and my friend came over and he built a tree house next to my tree house. And he's like, okay, this is my tree house. And that would basically be his property.
I guess we are gonna have another government close to another. This would
Well,
be
that's
very
yeah.
inefficient. So probably
I
the
mean,
most
look,
the
look,
thing
look,
that
look,
will
look.
happen is that
I
if
think we agree. I
yeah, we
think
agree.
we agree here because the way that anarchists look at it, we look at systems from the ground up, meaning we create a system that's non-contradictory and then we let it scale. And so the whole idea here is that if one person hundreds of years ago created a farm and they own that farm, that area, and little by little they expanded their farm, let's say, I don't know, like a couple feet every single year, and then they passed this farm down to their generations, like their son, they gave their son to inherit the farm, etc., etc. This is essentially how we see capitalism to work. Basically, the idea is you homestead an area and then you're free to trade the product from which you created, and this creates no contradictions in the system and it allows for voluntary trade.
The problem is people wouldn't voluntarily, again, if let's say you invite a friend over and the friends builds their own thing, you would either choose to have let's say to fuse your governments, your pieces of jurisdiction, and you have equal say, or you would stay separate, and that basically wouldn't lead to any much because you're not gonna expand a one-man state very much, like, or at least it would need like generation after generation after generation after generation to even amount to anything.
Well,
Again,
I agree with your axiom that each person is like a sovereign government, like they're a sovereign individual, they are their own government. And that is sort of like the basis for decentralization and why it works because
oh yeah, I agree
the
with
entire system, yeah, the
decentralization.
entire system is like hundreds of thousands or millions, hundreds of millions of nodes, hundreds of millions of sovereign people that come together to work together. And what they're not allowed to do is impede on each other because if they do impede on each other, it's going to lead to conflict and war. So we try to
Yeah,
avoid that.
yeah, basically everyone would gang up on the people that is starting conflict. In that case, yeah, because different governments they can do that.
Yeah.
Different governments that have signed trade deals can definitely gang up on the one place that breaks the deal.
Yeah, exactly. Like social contract. That's it. That's exactly how we see it. And that's, I mean, that's literally how I see anarchism working, and that's why I think it would work.
Hmm. I mean, that really doesn't sound that different from socialism.
The difference between socialism is you believe in democratizing property, and I believe in private property. So the farmer is the final sayer and the sovereign owner of the land, and he may have a family, but he's the final say in the family because he's the one who created it. And the difference in socialism is in the farm, each family member and each friend that lives in the farm would all have a vote and say of what they would do with the farm. That's the difference.
Yeah, but like at some point you have to understand that people that this thing was passed down to aren't really like uh, meritable of what they inherit. Like maybe you could make the argument that one genius made an extremely profitable business, and now it's basically his entire the profit should go entirely to him basically because he's the one basically doing everything. But again, what's with his son? Did his son do anything other than like inherent the stuff?
Oh yeah, so you're saying it's kind of unjust that the descendant inherits the wealth of the creator of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a fair thing to be made. And as we actually look at through generational wealth, it's around the third or fourth generation that like basically the wealth starts going downhill. And so it's like the first generation creates the wealth, the second generation kind of maintains the wealth, and the third generation sort of like loses the wealth. Like that's generally how it
When
goes.
is this seen? Like where? Is it worldwide or is it from some specific study? Because from what I
Oh,
know in
this is
America,
like
generational wealth tends to increase a
it's
lot.
kind of like a trend in the US. Like if you look at like I think there's
Uh,
stats on it, but like if you look at like wealthy individuals and their families, Like you can sort of like track how the wealth works, and it's sort of just because like you got like the originator, the founder, that they had a hard life, and so they have like a hard disciplined mindset, and so they're good with money, and then they sort of teach those traits to their kid, but like some of it is lost because their kid didn't have it as hard as them, and then the third way
Not
down, the
really
third
about any
generation.
hazards. It's mostly people are different, even if they inherit the same genes and they've got a good education. They may simply not have the talent or the will of continuing the business. So again, I would much rather prefer if the business, if I were to build a successful business, went to the most, let's say, the person that is closest to my idea of how to continue the business, rather than a relative of mine for like no reason.
Yeah. No, that's true. And like that's fair. Like there's also many exceptions. Like sometimes the kids won't be interested in the business or whatever. Or they'll be like better than their parent, which is also a possibility. But generally speaking, that's just how it goes. But here's the
Yeah.
thing. Here's the thing about generational wealth and inheritance. I agree with you that it's unfair, but what I'm saying is the alternative would just be worse. The alternative of the government coming in and seizing the property of the inheritance would be far, far worse, because this is why. If you're essentially taking away inheritance, you're essentially taking away the rights to gift people things, meaning you're taking away the right from people to gift things to other things. Because if you
I would just,
say you're not allowed to give a
I would just,
present to little Anna for her 8th birthday, like a Barbie doll, if you're not if you can do that, then why can't you give $1 million to someone else as a
no, you can
present?
give $1 million. You just cannot give private property. Like you could give $1 million technically if the
There's
socialist system allowed to be that rich in the first place. But if you got your money in the same way, you can give $1 million to anyone you want. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
there's
talking about
literally no
private property.
difference. There's literally no difference because the whole point of it is the inheritance of the capital. For example, I think that if someone owned like 5 lands, but then before they died, they sold the 5 lands and then gave the money
And they
to
wouldn't be
their
able to sell them.
descendant. Why?
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to sell private land because that's not how it works in a socialist system. You wouldn't be able to sell it. You would be able. You only have, um, let's say in as much as the government So you could, let's say, um, you could be let's say, in this case you're the founder. You're probably very well respected. You probably could say that. Your say on who's gonna succeed is probably gonna be respected. So you have that power, but that power doesn't come with the ability to force it on other people. So if the people
That
hate your guts, they can decide to not do as you're told, as you told them. But if you are allowed, and if you are like actual good businessman, they would definitely agree with you in that case.
if you're a good businessman, they would agree with you. I
I mean, yeah,
guess.
if you're of sound reasonment on why this person should be the next successor, as the original as the benefactor of the thing, of the entire thing, they would probably listen to you. I wouldn't see why not.
Yeah. I mean, so like I understand your critique. My point is that within our current system, you have a problem with inheritance. And I was explaining that there's no difference between passing on 5 properties or the money equivalent to the 5 properties. There would be no difference there in our current system
And they
because
would
all that matters
in
is the
our current
capital.
system, yes. Yeah, in our current system, yes. I
Yeah.
would I would agree.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in a system in which you couldn't buy private land, no, you would just use that for like um, personal enjoyment and stuff, like vacations, like other stuff,
Mm-hmm. But so
jewels, games.
other than inheritance, you're fine with the whole model of like creating something and then owning it. I mean, do you have a problem with that? Do you have a problem
Yeah,
with the old farmer who creates his farm and then he owns it? You're saying if a few people show up, they can't just like decide to democratically initiate themselves into his farm.
I mean, yeah, they cannot decide it, but to work there, they would probably ask for a part of their decision making because again, most other places on Earth allow that. So yeah, it would be just fair for it to work that way too. Again, they are part of
Okay,
your work.
but if the farmer knew that they were going to get a fifth of the shareholder value within the farm, why would he even allow them to become part of the
And it
farm?
wasn't. It wouldn't be value. It would be decision making. Again, the value wouldn't really be a thing because you cannot buy it. You cannot. Like this is just a place that wasn't used by any other government, and you decide to take it for yourself and make it and make it on you to make it profitable, and you succeed. People want to come to you, and you allow them to have decision making, and to make sure that the profits continue increasing because you need workers.
Yeah, that's true. If you do want to scale it, but at the same time, now the private property owner has to deliberate in his mind if it's worth scaling your business over losing the decision making power in your business.
Agree.
Especially when once you grant them decision making power, they can also then um decide to give themselves more power because they're part of the voting mechanism now, and they can decide to give themselves more wealth or wealth equal to the man.
Uh, yeah, they could decide that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that would really be in the bad. That would not be in the interest of the man who initially holds the property. So I don't see any reason why he would allow them to become part of the farm, and that kind of like
Oh
destroys
yeah,
scaling your
definitely it would
projects.
because people need workers. Like again, this happens in the current system too. Like people need workers. If they can't find workers, they're gonna pay higher wages because if not, they're just gonna go out of business. There's no one-man farm. At least if there is, it's definitely not gonna be as profitable as it could, especially in a unused land.
Yeah, that's true. The only question is it worth losing the majority hold over the farm in order to gain enough more productivity? That's the question that they have to decide.
And yeah, I would say that people that don't want to do that are very much capable of doing that. I would say that because those type of people would not scale. At the end of the day, this type of like arrangement would be very not used. Like it will be very minority.
Yeah, that's true. I
Mm.
have a question. How do you justify socialism? Do you believe in morality or do you think it's more of a utilitarian argument?
I think that the way you justify, okay, you know what historically socialists argued for, why
What? Tell
socialism
me.
existed in the first place.
Tell me.
They asked for the same slogans that the capitalists did the revolution of France over: fraternity, liberty, and equality. These are the things that they were fighting for, and these were technically the same thing that capitalist people were believing that capitalism would bring about. So it seemed more like that people have the same moral system, they just disagree on what things would bring about these things. So is it whether or
Okay.
not the capitalist system is gonna bring about these type of morals, whether or not the social system will bring about those morals?
Okay.